With the release of Ignition 7.9.4, we changed up the way that on-call rosters are selected in notification blocks of alarm notification pipelines. Let's go ahead and take a look at how they work. I have a notification block here, and if I go over to the Contacts tab in the Pipeline Block Editor, you'll see we have an option to select a roster type. Currently there are 3 roster types: Direct, Expression, and Calculated. The Direct roster type is by far the simplest. I simply need to select a roster from this drop-down list of on-call rosters that I've previously set up in the gateway. I'm going to select the Administrator's roster. Once you've made your selection, the notification block will always notify the users in that selected on-call roster. While this roster type is very easy to use, the trade-off is that it's not very flexible, forcing you to select a single roster to use for this notification block. Next up is the Expression roster type. The Expression roster type allows you to use Ignition's built-in expression language to select a particular on-call roster that you're going to use. Because you have the ability to create an expression here, it does offer some amount of flexibility. For example, in my expression here, I'm looking at the priority of the alarm. If it's equal to 4, then I want to use the administrator's on-call roster. Otherwise, it'll just use the user's on-call roster. In addition, I also have the ability to use tag values or even any of the built-in expression functions of the expression language. While this roster type is a little bit more complex, it does offer the flexibility you need to make a dynamic selection for what roster you're going to use for this notification block. However, it still forces you to choose a roster from your predefined list of rosters. So if you don't have users that you want to notify grouped into a particular roster, you won't be able to notify them. This forces you to really plan ahead and select which users are going to be notified in certain instances and create a roster for them. These limitations led us to build the third type of roster, the Calculated roster. The Calculated roster allows you to use scripting to create a custom roster at runtime. With it, you're essentially building a temporary roster that will be used on this one time during the notification. If a new notification comes in, the script will run again and rebuild a new roster using potentially new parameters. This is perfect if the users that you're notifying change with each new alarm instance, allowing you to truly customize who you're going to be notifying when the alarm event happens. I'm going to expand the block editor so we can take a closer look at how the script works. Now, the basics of this script is that it needs to return a list of dictionaries. This can be done in one of 2 ways. Either manually, by building out dictionaries, putting them into a list, and then returning them, or using the built-in builder object. Let's first take a look at the example down here that puts together a list of dictionaries manually. As you can see, it first creates 2 different user dictionaries. It then places those dictionaries into a list, and then it returns that list of dictionaries. Now, it's important to note that the key value pairs that you build your user dictionaries with must match the key value pairs that are listed here in the description. You can put together as many different users as you like, and you'll also notice that each user does not have to have the same type of information, as the user Bob has a phone number, while the user Joe has an email address. Now let's take a look at how we could use our builder object instead. I've put together an example that uses the same information from this manual example, except now it uses the builder object instead. You'll notice that this time we're calling methods of the builder object to insert in information for each user. Then, once we have all the user's appropriate information, we call the add method on that builder object. This adds all previously added information as a single user into the builder. I can add as many different users as I would like. Again, even using different types of information, such as a phone number or an email address. It's important to note that the methods of the builder object that I'm calling must match the key value pairs that are listed above. So for example, the phone number is expecting a list of strings, so when I call the phone method, I have to give it a list of strings for my phone number. Once I've added all the appropriate users, I then call .build on the builder object. This will give me the same list of dictionaries that I had previously built using the manual method. I then return that list of dictionaries to finish my script. You may have noticed that there's a couple of different ways that we can use the builder object, such as in my example where I've broken it up into multiple lines, or within the description where it's all on one line. Both of these will yield the same results. And I recommend you check out the user manual for more information on how to use both the builder method and the manual method. Now, it's important to note that the examples I've shown here are fairly simple, with just a couple of static users that I'm returning. However, it's not recommended that you use the calculated roster like this, as it would just be easier to build a roster for them in the gateway and then select that roster as a direct roster. Ideally, we would use scripting here to grab various bits of information, such as from a database or even tags, and then use that information to build very customized rosters from various user sources. This helps to ensure you're notifying exactly who you need to. Now, I want to point out that both the manual method and the builder method achieve a similar result, which is creating a list of dictionaries. This means that you can use whichever one feels more comfortable for you, so that you can build the best script possible. So, with the calculated roster type, as well as the expression and direct roster types, you can put together a notification pipeline that sends out alarm notifications to exactly who they're intended for.